what's up, you heathens and demons, you sinners and saints, beautiful blasphemous bastards. Yeah, tonight we're gonna have a one-on-one with William. William, what's up, man?
Well, howdy.
Yeah, we're doing this because I was fucking with you in a side chat and you challenged me to a one-on-one. You don't think I'm very bright?
That's irrelevant whether I think you're bright or not, but I do enjoy conversations.
Yeah, so do I. This should be fun. I am a little tired. I was going to have an after show for this, but I think I'm just going to have an open room tomorrow night probably, and kind of chill out and go to bed early tonight. I'm exhausted. So, yeah, we didn't really settle on a topic. I know we've been into guns. We've been into abortions. We haven't talked much about your religious beliefs, but we could talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I figured that would come up. So what would you like to know about my religious beliefs?
Well, I mean, you claim to be a Christian, or you believe in Jesus, but I don't know. I kind of get the hint that you don't necessarily put too much stock in the Bible. You don't feel like you have to follow some of the rules. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me a little bit because we haven't really gotten into. I mean, we've touched on it a little bit, but we haven't really gotten into it.
Yeah, sure. So I came from outside of the church. Like I wasn't interested in that shit. Actually, I didn't have time for it when I was, younger. I was interested in pursuits of the flesh. I think you can relate to that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, I came from the outside, and I went through a lot of changes. Like I started out in a Baptist church. I may have been the first person at that church to ever be kicked out of the church for asking questions, and that left a bad taste in my mouth. So then I went to Seventh-day Adventism, and I was there for like 10 years. But even then, I mean, there was a lot of good things about that, but something wasn't right. And, over time, it's really this community. I've found that I enjoy being around atheists more than I do Christians, because the Christians that I'm around a lot of times, they remind me of the people in the church that will just, it's a tradition thing. It's like they're not willing to look at the text. And I get a lot of Christians that tell me I'm not a Christian because I don't subscribe to the Omni God.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed. Like you criticize a lot, and I've noticed like in kind of like side chats. So your position is it's fairly easy to get theist when their God is an omni God. It's pretty easy to get them.
Right, because it's indefensible.
Yeah. Oh, and I agree.
And beyond that, the scriptures don't talk about him like that. If you read them, do you know what open theism is? I mean, I know you've probably heard the term, but do you know what it is?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Yeah, I've heard the term a lot. I kind of have an idea about what it is.
I'm gonna do like a really shameless plug for my friend Chris Fisher. I met him in these little streams or whatever, and he wrote a book called God is Open. And I purchased the book, and it got me to stop and go, how much of what I believe is tradition, and how much do I believe comes directly out of the scriptures? And so when you read the scriptures openly, you find that there's a God there that learns. There's a God there that repents of mistakes or actions that he's done. That negotiates with humans, like negotiates and strikes deals, contracts with humans. That's the way it's represented. Now, as time has gone on since then, you kind of pegged me a little bit with it's not that I don't believe that the Bible is real, and that there's true stuff in it. It's just that it's written by men. There's only one thing that was ever claimed to be written by the hand of God, and that was the Ten Commandments. Everything else, as far as I know, is coming through the interpretation or the perspective of men writing.
Well, I mean, even
know what I mean? And
even the Ten Commandments was technically written by Moses, right? I can't remember the story. Did Moses
that's
make
the thing.
tablets, or did he find them?
Well, we don't know. We don't know, because if you read it, he was alone up there on the mountain, and then he came down with some stones. So if you're at the bottom of the fucking mountain, you don't know for sure that God wrote it. But that is, Moses did say that God wrote it with his own finger, and he did have to go back up and get it again. But for all I know, Moses went up there so he could chisel it out himself. I don't know. And that's what I get to with everybody. I don't believe that there's anyone who can claim to not be agnostic.
Mm.
All right, you can be an agnostic atheist, you can be an agnostic Christian, but the bottom line is we don't know. And anybody that says they do know, they won't be able to prove it.
Yeah.
So it's belief.
Yeah, and here we find ourselves in agreement, which has been rare, because that's always been my position, is I don't know. A lot of people claim that makes me an agnostic, and I think I try to claim being an agnostic when it comes to a knowledge claim, right? When it comes to a belief,
I've
claim,
heard you say that.
Yeah, when it comes to a belief claim, I'm definitely an atheist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I know that you've probably heard me talk about this when I spoke to Praise after one of your shows, but I mean, I think it's important, especially when Christians want to enter into an atheist-rich environment, to don't throw the Bible at people who have no interest in the Bible and don't recognize it to be anything more than a fairy tale, because you can't make a point that they're going to reason with, but you can at least help people understand that they're agnostic. And you might be able to talk about the questions we have about what we actually know, like in eternal energy, things like that. And you can find common ground, but I still haven't found a way to help anyone else connect from eternal energy or a big bang to the God of the Bible. Now, I know why I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that for anyone else. So the best that I can tell anyone is, at least admit that you're agnostic, that you don't know.
Yeah,
That's kind of the seeds that I throw out there.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because I think atheists get in trouble when we make claims, and I definitely think that theists that make the claim of knowing the existence of God definitely get themselves into trouble. And their only justification usually would be like this divine revelation that they see, or this feeling that they get when they feel like they're talking to them. And I just don't.
Okay,
see
well,
that
I'm not
as
going to
evidence.
argue with that. I'm not going to argue with that, because I believe that I've experienced whatever the deity is, because I wasn't looking for religion. Believe me, I was looking to smoke weed, drink beer, and play video games, and fuck off as I possibly could. And then I let a woman move in with me, and she had a almost 1-year-old child, and strange shit started happening after that, like weird things. And I'm not gonna talk about my testimony here on the stream, but I saw a bunch of shit that I couldn't explain, and it led me down some strange paths, and I've seen a lot of weird shit, but it's nothing I can demonstrate to anyone else. So it only serves to, like, steal my own resolve about what I have experienced, even though I can't honestly claim I know for sure what it is. I can't actually say that I know that my God is Yahweh.
Yeah, and that's a fair answer. I think that if a God exists, right? So say Yahweh does exist, I don't think he can possibly be the only one. I think that if one exists, then probably many exist.
Okay, now I'm going to agree with you there. I'll say that I believe there's only one creator, but there are other higher powers out there, and that's kind of, I didn't limit myself to just looking at the Jewish mythologies. I went through the Babylonian mythologies, the Norse mythologies, the Babylonians. How do you say Babylonians? Egyptian. But really, they come from archetypes. But the stories they tell are very similar, especially with their hierarchical structure.
Oh yeah,
and so it's interesting about the family of gods.
I think Christianity gets, or I think a lot of religions get a lot of their stories from the root stories in Samaria. I think of the Sumerian story of Adamu, who was the first human, and it kind of
very, very interesting. You brought that up.
Very, very similar to the story of Adam.
Adamu.
And Eve.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that Christians need to loosen up a little bit and stop demanding that people see it their way. And stop demanding that people accept that their version of Christianity. It's really not our business what other people believe. It's really not. We need to focus on our relationship with whatever the God is. And if other people are interested, great, but we shouldn't be pushing them towards anything. And I'm gonna tell you something, and I don't know if this is true for you, man, but you have an aggression towards Christianity at times. And I wonder sometimes if it's because of the Christians in their church face. That holier than thou thing that they do?
Yeah, well,
where they walk around and act like their shit don't stink?
Definitely my aggression, I try to keep the aim focused at evangelical Christians, fundamental Christians, the more progressive, and I've been touching up, trying to kind of remind myself open theism, and it kind of centers around human and divine freedom. It's talking about in the libertarian sense, so it kind of makes sense that your religious belief kind of parallels some of your political beliefs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to focus, I try to make room, like for me, if there's going to be coexistence between the godless and those that have God, there can only really be coexistence with progressive aspects within that, right? Like, you've got to be able to accept me as a non-believer, and I think that takes a progressive mode of thought within all religions, but most especially within Christianity here in America. I
don't think it's hard to accept a non-believer. I think it would be wrong for a Christian to assume that everyone can just jump right in and just consume all this stuff and just swallow it whole without ever questioning. And you know what I mean? You almost have to ask. You almost have to ask where that expectation comes from, and if that's coming from what happened with yourself, you may want to question why you're a Christian at all. Because did you reason into it, or did you do it because your parents did it, or because you saw Billy Graham when you were 8 on TV? Or I don't know, what? And I don't want to get into the once saved. I'm just saying that people don't know, and I think we push atheists away and polarize them with our demands that they see it through the Christian lens.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. My family did that. I still got plenty of family that associate with me, but they've all pretty much took their distance. And I don't know if it's because I don't bend to that Christian line of thought, or if just being around me and the possibility that I might somewhat challenge their belief systems is intimidating for them. It's been so long that I don't even really know the answers of why we're so distant now, outside of the fact that back when I first came out as an atheist, they really rejected it and they didn't like it, and they tried to force a conversion.
Well, do you forgive them for being insane enough to believe, in a God?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's like a mental illness. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think most people believe in the gods they believe in because they were born into that religion. Most people have the gods of their parents, and if you really look at the numbers, even most atheists go on. Atheism really, it seems to be a stepping stone for some people out of their first religion into their next. A lot of the numbers indicate that. Now, not saying all atheists do that.
Like wiping the slate?
Yeah, well, it seems like it's a place for them to rest at before they start looking at other religious beliefs, which I think a lot of atheists, there's not much community here. You do end up being isolated in your communities often, because there's not many Austin, Texases out there where there's like this community of atheists that are together. So I think oftentimes they're seeking community, so they seek it in other religions. I've personally probably seen, 5 or 6 atheists since I started doing YouTube go from atheist to polytheist specifically.
I think an important step for me was asking myself if God could lie. If this thing that I was experiencing that felt like it was sort of guiding me towards a place I really wasn't sure I wanted to go, I was like, well, could this thing lie to me? And if you ask a Christian, that's impossible. Mm-hmm. That God can't lie. But if you really think about it, how would we know that? Where would we get the idea that the deity couldn't lie, unless it comes from the Bible? And if that's breathed from God's own lips, then how do we know that God doesn't lie?
Mm.
You know, could it be the trickster God, like Loki?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
but if you don't question these things, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think it can be argued that the God of the Bible lies several times, especially
Such as,
especially when he's incarnated in the garden as flesh with Adam and Eve. It talks about, you know, feeling the wind on his flesh, the wind through his hair, and he says he can't find Adam, right? So that has to be a lie if he's omni.
again, yeah, that jumps into the omni God, and that's a hard thing for people to separate. But you know, if you follow that line of reasoning, then the Bible is full of lies, because there's oftentimes that God has to have angels give him reports. He has to come down and investigate Sodom and Gomorrah himself to find out if reports are true. An all-knowing God doesn't have to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
And he changes his mind. He changes his mind. Moses had to convince him not to kill all of Israel because they made the golden calf. Moses had to say, hey, God, this is going to look bad. You don't want to do it. Like a PR rep, you know, Moses, you know, don't look, you know, I know you want to wipe them all out, but you're going to look silly to the Egyptians. They're going to be like, why did you bring them out just to kill them? And so if you read the Bible as it is presented, God reasons, God learns, God repents of things that he's done and changes his mind. He makes plans that he can go through with, but he has, all right, here's the thing. Anyone that says that God has no limitations will deny free will, because you can't make someone love you. God is unable to make someone love him without giving them free will. He can't force it. That's just not the way love works. So he has limitations. If he's eternal, he can't choose not to exist. He is limited. He must exist. He cannot do other.
Yeah, I definitely agree. God has exhibited changing his mind. He brought the flood, but you know, even during the flood, if you read it closely, he was going to kill everything. Then notice that Noah was specifically, I don't know what's the word I'm thinking of, pious or whatever. Noah was living the life that he should have been living, so he spared Noah and his family, and ultimately spared all life.
Stop. That was not Noah's qualifications. It says he was perfect in his generations. That means his bloodline. That has nothing to do with his behavior. I'm not saying he was a bad guy, but then you have, after the flood is over, he gets drunk and, you know, passes out naked in his tent. So he may have been an alcoholic. I don't know. Yeah. But it never says that he was that he was a super duper guy.
It doesn't seem like he's blamed for that by God. Like, God doesn't really have take any issues with that. He took issues with Ham observing him drunkenly naked, but not issues with Noah himself.
Right. And if you notice, God makes friends with a lot of sinners in the Bible. David, he says, is a man after his own heart. David was a murderer. Well, not indirectly a murderer. He was an adulterer. Look at Solomon. He gave Solomon the wisdom of everything. Solomon turned against him, but he still loved these people. Abraham was a liar. Okay, and I'm sure that the Muslims and the Jews and the Christians are all going to stone me for this, but you know, he lied about his relationship with his, I guess, half sister.
All right, well, let's talk about this notion of love, because that's something that I usually agree with just about every theist, no matter how progressive that they are. So, like, do you love? If you're walking down the sidewalk and say you see an anthill, and there's thousands of ants working in this anthill. Do you love those ants? Because it seems like that would be, you know, if we're talking about a being that's ultimately high enough to have created the universe, and you did refer to him as the creator, so something that is so significant to create this vast universe that we live in. Do you think that something like that could possibly love something like us?
I get what you're saying with us. As far as the ants go, I guess it would be what the intent is for each of our different species. I think he can love us. We're the only ones that seem to be created with the capacity that we have. Ants and all, like it.
that we
let me
know
give you
of,
let me give
right?
you
Like,
another.
so if it is a
Yeah.
creator God, I don't think that there's any reason to assume it would stop creation, which would probably be its primary function, just because of us. You know, I would
Oh no, yeah,
I would
he's still
assume,
creating.
yeah, I would assume that he went on to create other sentient species, and probably all of those species see them in whatever way that they see him or it.
Hmm.
And that they think that they're probably centralized to it, just like we would.
That's probably true. Probably true.
So you know, it's just always been something that struck me as, and I think a lot of human beings utilize this notion that this being loves them or us specifically. That if we're not following some kind of code,
Mm-mm.
that we are, you know,
Well,
outside of maybe even humanity.
well, let me clarify, Knock, because I don't think that we're his central focus. I think that humans put far too much value on our role in existence and in God's, priorities. I don't think that we're his primary priority. There's something much bigger going on that we're a small part of. You know, we think that we're the center of everything, but I don't think that's the case at all. Have you ever raised like any livestock or animals or anything like that?
It's been a long time, but I did stay on an uncle's horse farm for a couple summers. So you know,
Okay.
I worked his trash route, but then I would also kind of help with the horses and all that stuff as well.
So I kind of look at, and this may be wrong. I may have this totally backwards, but I kind of look at us not as livestock, not as livestock. I think that in general, the Creator loves us, and I think that there's individuals that he doesn't care for as much. In general, I think he loves us all, but down to the individual, I think he cares about us, but in a lot of ways is repulsed by us. And then when it comes to death, God catches a lot of heat for that. But you know, livestock, animals, creatures like that are being maintained, with certain resource limitations, they have to be culled from time to time. They do, for whatever reason, and you feel bad when or at least I feel bad when I have to cull animals. I mean, I don't enjoy it at all, but I know it's necessary. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't begin to know what God's what his prerogatives are, and what his limitations are, or what his intent is. Like, that's the other thing. I don't know what his intent is, but I don't think that his values line up directly with ours because of his perspective.
Right, yeah, this is interesting. So this is kind of my mic.
Did that
So
make sense, or did I?
yeah. Somehow my mic got muted and I didn't push the button, so that was weird. This cord keeps coming out. I really need to get in.
But did it make sense?
Yeah,
'Cause I'm
yeah, and I think it's insightful because this has given me kind of insight into why you think some of the things that you think, especially being an open theist, and like I said, this understanding that God gives us this divine freedom, right? Like this libertarian sense of freedom. When we can have a conversation about guns, and you say that this isn't a right that the government can take away. You literally believe that this God gives you the right to defend yourself, right? And I think I agree. You have the right to defend
Oh,
yourself.
so yeah. In a natural sense, yes. But he doesn't. Just the mere fact that I am alive, the value is my life. All other rights come from that initial value of my human life. All right, you can take God all the way out of it when it comes to this, if you want to go into my political views. But I don't believe that I owe allegiance or can be subjected to any other man, since all men are created equal. I have no master. Anyone who pretends to be my master is operating in fraud. I consent or I don't consent to action. That's all it is.
Yeah. I think it kind of makes sense. Looking at open theism here, this is probably not.
No, stop. Don't compare. Look, you changed it into I want you to separate that because it doesn't. My open theism doesn't affect. That's not where my ideas about rights come from. I
Well,
could be completely godless and still recognize where the rights are not given by government. I have the
sure.
rights inherent. The government is supposed to protect it, but can turn against me and try to suppress my rights at times. So I will not bow to that oppression, and it has very little to do with God.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't believe in a God, and I pretty much think the same thing. I think that we do have inherent rights. I would probably put it more on this universal, what humans have learned over the course of time in our evolution, mixed with cultural diversity and all of that. Yeah, but I would think like my position that the woman's right to an abortion, it doesn't stop just because the Supreme Court sends it back to the states, or if Congress were to outlaw it across the country. And I think
How can you be certain that it's a right?
Well, I think that you feel the same way about guns, because you
No,
see
how
it
can
as
you be
this
certain
right.
that abortion is a right?
Well, I think that right to privacy is a right, and especially when it comes to people's medical decisions.
Does that mean that I can murder someone in the privacy of my own home if as long as no one else is aware of it?
I don't see how
Can
that,
I murder an innocent person in my own home
I don't
as
s-
long as it's private?
I don't see how that equates. Nobody's saying that you can murder somebody else.
Yeah, that's what abortion is.
I know
You're
that's
murdering a
that's-
human life.
I know that's what you think. It
Well,
is.
you've been unable to demonstrate otherwise, and that's where the conflict of rights comes in.
I've actually am the only one that has been able to demonstrate otherwise. You
Oh
say
well, then do it again for me.
well, my line falls around 24 to 28 weeks when the embryo develops EEG.
So it's not a life until then.
Yeah, I don't think that
It's
we
not
can,
alive.
We determine death by those EEGs going away, of those EEGs dying. I think we can determine life by those EEGs starting to develop.
You think that we can?
Yeah,
If
a lot
this
of
was
scientists,
so, if this was so evident,
a lot
no.
of scientists think that's. I mean, that's
If
the
it was
that's
science,
the argument, right?
if
is
it was
when does
science,
personhood
not
begin?
Knock, if it was science, it could be demonstrated, but it has yet to be demonstrated that is precisely when life begins.
Well,
Okay?
we have demonstrated that is when we develop EEG.
So then it's not okay. That's fine, but that might not be the metric that's being used.
Well,
I mean,
no,
I wouldn't agree to that metric. I think that it's alive and begins growing from day one.
Well, I wouldn't disagree that human development begins day one.
It's alive and it's human at that point.
How do you determine what's alive? Does it have a heartbeat at that point? Does it have?
Is it growing?
Does it have brain function? Is it just?
Is it growing?
Is it just?
I just gave you my metric.
I mean,
Is it
all
growing?
cells are technically living, and yet we're not shedding tears for the cells
I'm
we shed off of our
specifically
skin.
speaking. I'm specifically speaking of human life and it growing at any stage. As long as it's growing and it is human life, then whether you want to call it a person yet, it is a human life, and that's where value comes from.
That's what
Rights come from there.
That's what you want to call it, but there's no consensus on that. Most scientists would actually disagree. They'll all agree with you that human development
it's not
starts
about
on
consensus.
day one.
It's not about consensus. If it's science, that should be demonstrable. There should be empirical evidence.
So are we going to start making laws about the death of every cell now? Because they are technically living.
No, only human life.
Well, again,
Human life carries inherent
Then
right.
you need to just demonstrate how human life starts on day one, because I don't think that can be demonstrated.
No, I don't have to demonstrate that. I've demonstrated that it is human because it's not an ostrich. It is growing, so it is alive. It is human life.
Demonstrate that. How is a couple cells human? Are we just a couple cells?
Is it growing? Is it growing?
Eventually, it will grow into a person. Yes.
And its DNA is that the DNA of a human being?
I guess so. Yeah, maybe.
Well, there we are.
But again, so is the skin cells that we shed every day. I mean, a lot of things.
No,
A lot of things
no,
would
none of
have
my
human
skin cells
DNA
are
in
going to
it.
grow into. No, none of my skin cells are going to grow into a to another being.
So, but I think we've established why you think personhood begins day one, right? And that is that you.
Okay, yeah.
So, do you believe that?
No,
you,
wait.
that,
Stop saying personhood. Don't mix up the
Well,
terms.
no,
Personhood. That's,
I'm gonna say what I want to say. You believe in free speech, right?
that okay. If you want to just use whatever term fits in, I can start making up words too.
I'm not making up words. Personhood is the
All right.
argument.
So you may use personhood, but I will not agree to that term to mean human life.
So are humans
A
not
corporation
persons?
is a person. A corporation has personhood, and it's an artificial entity.
I don't agree with that.
It's the 14th Amendment.
Well, I think that's Citizens United.
No, the 14th Amendment creates a duality of citizenship. You have your natural person, and then you have, and that's like a state personhood, and then you have a national personhood. But again, it's just the idea that a corporation can have rights like a person, and they do, even artificial. It maybe not rights, but privileges akin to a person, like rights. So that's a fictional entity. I'm talking when I use the term human life, I'm not trying to obfuscate it by using legalese. I'm being very precise with what I'm trying to say. Human life, not personhood.
Well, yeah, but again, the argument is personhood. Are we killing persons? Are we killing human beings?
Who are you arguing that with? A human
With
being
you.
doesn't have to be a person. I just demonstrated that.
With you. I'm arguing that with you.
Yeah, well then, if you're going to argue with me, then you have to at least take on board
back to
my
my
position.
point, because you kind of overrode. I was trying to get to my point. Is ultimately.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
I think that you see personhood beginning or human life beginning at conception. You see that as a human because you believe that this God figure has a hand in that, right?
No, I don't see. Why do you want to put the God thing in to make it a religious argument? I already told you that it wasn't. I don't have to believe in a God to recognize where human life begins, and that I think you're being a little dishonest with my position by trying to bring my religion.
Well, I'm just trying to understand it.
These things.
I'm trying to understand why you're so adamant
Okay.
that
All right.
the moment
I got a perfect.
the moment sperm meets egg, that's
Okay.
where life begins.
Let
I'm trying to
let me
understand.
put it into. I'm going to give you my perspective, okay? But I'm going to do it in a kind of an analogy thing. All right. So you drive at night. You've had animals run out in front of you before, right? It's scary. You can agree to that. You've been in this situation.
Oh yeah, sure.
All right.
It's terrifying.
So you're driving down the road. Follow me here. So you're driving down the road. It's night, and you see a shape moving across the road, and you're not quite sure what it is. It might be a human. It looks like it could be a human, but you're not sure. Do you hit the brakes just to err on the side of caution, or do you assume it fucking doesn't matter and blast through whatever it is and keep going? And I'm disregard the damage to your own vehicle.
I hit the brakes, but not because I'm afraid it's a human being. I don't want to kill anything. I don't want to hit a deer.
Okay.
And it's because I don't want to kill that deer. But
you would err on the side of caution.
Yeah, I'm gonna slam on my brakes.
Me too.
But even though I know rationally that could be like the worst thing you can do in that situation, especially if somebody's right behind you. But I would still do it because I would not want to harm that living being there.
Then you understand my perspective perfectly.
No, but I understand that as a living being because it's a being. It's walking around.
Well, you don't know that. You don't know that. You're not sure. It's a shape.
It's got a thought process, to it.
Ah.
But I mean,
Okay.
It's not just a shape, though. You do have headlights. You're gonna see it.
Well, let's just say it's blurry. Maybe it seems to be in a dark cloth or something. Maybe it's hard to. It's foggy.
I've just never experienced that, though. You
don't have to imagine it.
When I come on on an animal at night, which we have a lot of them here in Michigan, it's actually a big problem. If you're driving at night, you're probably gonna have a deer run out in front of you. I always recognize it for what it is, whether it's a deer, a raccoon, or whatever it is. I mean, even a turtle. My headlights are gonna show me it's a turtle.
Okay, I stand corrected. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's close enough for you to understand that I err on the side of caution.
Well,
If I'm not sure, then I'm going to preserve the life rather than extinguish.
I would do the same thing with a baby crawling across the road. I would do the same thing with a pregnant woman. I would try not to hit her, but not because I'm afraid of harming the fetus, because I don't want to harm her or the fetus in that instance. Do you get it? Yeah, I think it's a bad analogy because
Yeah.
what we're talking about is, when does personhood begin, or when does beinghood begin? Right? Like,
Well,
what is
personhood
a
begins when you
being?
get your social security number. But your as being alive, being
I
a
don't agree with
living.
that. See, again, my stance is personhood begins around 24 to 28 weeks once we start developing these EEGs.
Again, because you will interchange human life or personhood, which they're not equivalent.
Well, I don't want to kill people.
Me either. Fuck that. No.
Right? Yeah. So,
And so until I am
I mean, unless it's the
pretty damn
corporation
certain.
kind. I don't like corporations. And
Okay.
and
Yeah,
you know,
I'm with
William,
you there.
I have to tell you, I have seen the word sovereign citizen in the side chat about 50 times. So it's not just me that jumps to that shit when I hear you speak.
No, there's some
I did
stupid
that
people
first
out
time.
there.
Well, I mean, you do give these really what we would consider sovereign citizens answers a lot of time. You answer, you share a lot of sovereign citizens' beliefs. We can put it that way.
Well, that means
And I
they're not totally wrong.
I think that you would agree with that if you know anything about them, right?
Yeah, it means that they're not totally wrong.
But cool, that's awesome. I was just making that point. So, you know, I started this thing, you know, intentionally on a subject that I knew we was going to get along with, but because I want to try to understand if your religious beliefs tie into any of this, and I know you say they don't, and I could actually see how they might not, but at the same time, I don't understand why you're so dead set on the fact that we that this is human life, that this is murder. So, like, you're literally saying and accusing all of the women from you know, the time Roe v. Wade came down up till now, and I think that's about 65 million abortions, which really, if you think about it, is a fairly low number in regards to population, right?
Yeah.
So you're
I mean, it's still
but you're
it's still a
calling
massacre.
that's 65 million instances of murder. So you're basically
Or manslaughter.
labeling these people as murderers of killing human life.
Well, no, I told you I've talked to you before, and I changed my position. I don't think that women should be held responsible. I think that men should be held responsible.
But that doesn't apply to the statement that I just made, that you see this as murder. So you
Yeah,
think
it's
that
murder.
all of those-
It's manslaughter.
times that by 2 if you're going to consider both parents, and that would be what, 130
No, I'm not considering both parents.
million murderers, right?
I'm not considering both parents. I'm only considering the men. The women have no blame or responsibility in it. They can't be held accountable.
Why?
Well, I mean,
I still haven't figured out if this new position of yours is a troll or not, but we'll run with it.
because they've demonstrated that it's too much pressure. They can't make the decision to preserve life, and even if they do, they're burdened either way. When it could all be avoided if men would just take the responsibility and vet these women out and find out if they're the kind of psychopath that would murder a child before they fuck them.
So right there, you're making the claim that they're a psychopath that would murder a child.
It's not their fault. Mentally ill people don't know they're crazy. Men have to be responsible for that. Just take the choice out of their hands. They can fuck whoever they want to fuck and have abortions. That's fine. But you shouldn't be the one to
So are you saying
do
that?
that. And
only,
if you
are you saying
you should
only-
go to jail.
Are you saying women are mentally ill, and that only women are mentally ill because
No,
men need to be
Anyone that kills an innocent child, must be mentally ill or just.
Well, I'm not sure if you cut out.
I mean,
there.
unless it's an accident like manslaughter.
Well, no, see,
And if they're ignorant and they don't know any better, that's one thing. But you should sit down with a woman and ask them what the fuck they're gonna do.
There, I agree with you. If you kill a child, I think you definitely got some issues. The issue is here, and I know you're not wanting to argue it, but it's the one we're arguing. We do live in a world of science. Is that a child that's being murdered? And I personally see a big difference. I personally see a big difference between a child, whether it's a 1-day-old child or a 10-year-old child. There's a huge difference between that, murdering that, and getting rid of something that hasn't developed into that yet.
Okay.
There's a huge difference. Do you at least admit that there's a huge difference between a zygote and a 2-year-old child?
Oh yeah, I look totally different now than when I graduated high school.
I mean, I have less hair and I got a bit more weight, but that's not what I'm talking about. I still have my hands. I still have
human beings.
I have those EEGs in my brain firing off.
Yeah,
right?
and human beings change throughout their existence from the time that they're conceived onwards. And just because we don't have the necessary tools maybe to detect when exactly the life starts, we're trying, and we got ideas about it, and I think it's good that we're researching it. But until we know for goddamn certain, I took an oath, to defend the rights that are given inherently by the Constitution. And if this is a human life and it indeed has inherent rights, then I have no choice but to defend that child. Now, if there does exist a right, like I told you before, to kill your child, which is inconceivable because it would be denying a right. But if that right does exist and you can demonstrate that, then you have an argument that I would have to back up too.
Well, nobody can just kill their child, right? So you're the one. So you accuse me.
I agree.
You accuse me of making up terminology when I say things like personhood. But aren't you the one
misapplying it? Maybe misapplying.
Aren't you the one like deliberately misapplying the term child to a fetus?
If you prefer human life, we can do that.
But I'm talking about your terminology here. You want to focus on terminology, so I'm focusing on yours. You're the one sitting here deliberately putting the word child instead of using the word fetus, or the one that I prefer would be like zygote, but personal preference.
Okay, so I'll go with human life because it's not arguable that it is human life.
What do you mean by this? Because I think you stated that wrong. You said it's not arguable that it is human life, and I think you believe otherwise.
Right. There is no argument against it being a human life. It is growing. It is alive, and it is
There's plenty
human.
of argument.
It will not be a turtle. It will not be a frog. It will be a human being if left to continue its journey in life. Just like all of us.
Is that guaranteed?
What, that it's not going to be a frog?
From that first moment, is it guaranteed that it's going to be a human being?
I mean, if it's not killed.
Yeah, I mean, miscarriage is a thing.
Yeah, sure. Miscarriage and stuff like that. But left to its natural progression. On day one.
What about the ability? And I think it's right around, I don't know, maybe 4 weeks. I can't remember the exact time. But there comes a time, up until a certain point, that fetus could become 2 human beings, or 3 human beings, or 4 human beings, or 5 human beings.
What is this point? What is this certain precise point that you point to?
The point is human development begins at conception. We begin to develop into humans. People, under the Constitution, I believe, have a right to privacy, and especially have a right to privacy when it comes to medical necessity, medical needs, being able to take
so as long as it's private,
make the decisions for your own body. And if I want
so I can infringe on a right in private.
If I want to get rid of a kidney, I can do that, right?
That's not analogous. Your kidney will never grow into another human being.
It's a living part of human
privacy from the doctor. Yeah, that's fine if he doesn't want to say, but he should be barred from committing the murder himself. unless there's a medical necessity that would endanger the woman's life, not her comfort, not her finances, not her future plans, but her very life, then in that case, rather lose one than both.
So how can you sit here and pretend to believe in libertarian? Damn, I don't. I'm not hitting that button. The stupid cord. So how can you sit here and pretend that you believe in libertarian free will if you don't believe in a woman's free will to make her own medical decisions?
I told you that she should be able to do it. She shouldn't be punished for it at all. Men should be responsible for knocking up crazy bitches.
Well, so that's your new stance. Like I said, I can't figure out if it's a troll because like in that you make very ridiculous statements about how about psychopathic women that are going to be willing to kill children, which is not what they're doing. Again, like I think that you even
that
agree
hasn't
with
been
me.
demonstrated.
There's a difference between a living child and a zygote. I think
they're taking an innocent human life. They're taking an innocent human life for convenience sake. That's terrible. That's psychopathic. But I can forgive them that. It appears to be too much pressure for the woman. And I think that men ought to step up and be men and take that responsibility and burden off their shoulders. And that way they're not forced to deal with it. Now, we can get vasectomies and bang, bang, bang all they want. But we shouldn't put them in that situation by causing that issue. And if we do, we ought to take full responsibility because we had the control from the very beginning. We could not put it in.
So I think you just said something vitally important there. And I think that this goes to this stance, right? Like that you're taking here, that men are ultimately responsible, which is, I mean, it's not what's being put forward by
now you sound like the patriarchy
by you pro-life folks. This is not what's being put forward. What's being put forward is that the women are responsible. But you said something vitally important there, and you implied that men have control over women, and they need to take that control back. Is that not what you just said?
Yeah, that's a biological thing.
So you believe that men have control over women?
To a great degree, yes. Like women didn't give themselves rights.
You do that,
right?
How can you sit here and pretend to believe in libertarian free will if you are going to make a statement like that?
I'm saying that we shouldn't control them. We shouldn't control them at all. Everything about my approach says that women should be left unmolested. Stay the fuck out of their bodies. Leave them alone. And I mean, stay out of your bodies with their dicks until you're sure they're not crazy.
Wait, but you were just saying how men need to control women.
No, I said that we're capable of it. Go visit the Middle East if you don't think it's possible.
Well, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm asking if you believe this, if you believe that this is inherently how things are set up, and you did say that.
Right of might.
You implied that biology gives us control over women.
It makes it so that right of might is almost in our hands entirely when it comes to that. But I think it's abusive to use that. And I think men have demonstrated, especially in Western society, that we don't want to control women. We wanted them to vote. We wanted them to have rights. They didn't want to vote as bad as we wanted them to.
What the fuck are you?
The majority of women weren't interested in the vote.
Well, so when you're talking about when the women's movement was happening, you're right about that. Because that's how they were raised. That's how they were indoctrinated. Oftentimes by their church, and it still happens to this very day. You can go.
That may well be true.
You can go to many churches down in the Bible Belt, and they'll be preaching that doctrine. And there's plenty of people that represent that doctrine in the modern day. I've covered quite a bit of them.
Knock, I'm going to give you a chance to go ahead and do like a commentary because I have to do my report when I'm at work, and it'll take me 3-4 minutes. But you can go ahead and do what you do, and I'll be right back if you still want to talk to me.
Oh, yeah. I figure we can go about another hour.
Okay, that should be fine. Just a second to do what I got to do. I'll be right back.
All right, cool. All right, so let me adjust my camera, and I'll turn this on a little bit if I can. Show you guys. There we go. It's my new glasses. My new glasses. I haven't had glasses in about, I don't know, 5-6 years probably. And I've never had multi-focal glasses. So I got these little things at the bottom that I read through, and it bothers me. I got to get used to them. And before, the last time I had glasses, I didn't have to wear them all the time. I only really had to wear them when I was driving. And my eyesight's gotten so bad, I got to wear them all the time now. But yeah, my daughter says I look smarter. So, this has been an interesting conversation, and it's going pretty much practically the way that I thought it would. I didn't think that we'd jump quite so quickly into abortion, but I think I made the statement that landed us there earlier than I expected to go there. I really wanted to kind of flesh out some of the religious beliefs, because I'm not quite sure. And this is just my opinion. Now, William knows himself better than me, but the vibe that I'm getting is that his religion does play a role in this. His religion, I think, plays that necessary role in trying to see this human life starting immediately, despite, I mean, I would argue all the evidence otherwise. I don't know. I don't see a tadpole quite the same as I see a frog. It's just... And that's even a bad analogy, because that tadpole is a singleized living being, to where this embryo, while inside the mother, it isn't that yet. It will become that one day, maybe, but it isn't that yet. And I think that that's a convolution of data, right? So he's probably, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's probably been told that most scientists believe that life begins at conception, when that's not the truth. Most scientists believe that human development begins at conception, but the argument is and has been personhood. William's back. So, all right, you're back. You done?
Yeah, I'm done. But before we get started back, I want to thank Pixie Storms. She recommended a song that it's called Killing Me Slowly. And I don't even remember the name of the band, but that damn song is stuck in my fucking head. But I love it. So thanks, Pixie.
Oh, by the Fugees?
No, that's Killing Me. What did I say, softly or slowly?
No, you said slowly. I was thinking Killing Me Softly. Yeah, I haven't.
And it's fun because when I sing along, I still say softly because the Fugees. Thank you, Lauren.
Lauryn Hill was the shit, man. She had a great voice. But all right, so
I was more of a Sade kind of. Never mind. I won't say any more about Sade. I'm sorry.
I don't think I even know who that is.
All right, this is almost over. You better come up with something good after saying that. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Let's go. Let's get into it.
What song does she have that I would recognize?
Let's see. Lovers Rock, Smooth Operator.
All right, Smooth Operator. I recognize.
That was real old. But Lovers Rock, if you ever get a chance to hear that, it's very feminine. So I'm not sure you'll like it. I know you're not in touch with your feminine side. That's okay.
You say I'm not in touch with my feminine side?
Well, not on camera.
Why do you say that?
Because
I rage.
Rage. You're a very angry man. Angry white male. And a straight white male at that.
I actually agree with that, but I don't think I was. I mean, I had some anger when I first started YouTube, but I think a lot of my anger comes from talking to people here on YouTube.
Well, I got a question for you. You ever given any thought to marrying a man or something like that? I'm asking for Cerberus.
Who, me?
Yeah, no, I know you're not marrying men.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely hetero. I experimented and found what I liked and what I don't like. So I'm not.
That's cool. I'm not going to ask you anything about that.
And when it comes to
you just don't want the commitment of marriage.
My effeminate side, I think that old Southern bravado still comes out of me. Man's man type shit. I hate it.
I
But
don't hear the accent though. I've been searching for your accent, and it's so far gone. I
I've
can't call you Southern at all.
I've lived up here since I was like, I don't know, 25. I've been here nonstop. So yeah, I haven't even visited.
Yeah, but you're
North
not even
Carolina.
40 yet, are you?
I'm 40. I'm about to be 45.
Okay, so but yeah, I guess that's enough time to have all that Southern
Well, I've always
twang
had
come out of your talk.
I always had a weird accent anyway because I was born here in Michigan. So my dad didn't move us down
Say yonder.
Yonder. Fix
And
it.
see, it doesn't even sound right. God damn.
I can turn on. Well, I used to be able to turn on the Southern accent. I had a character named Earl, where I could turn it on. Now it's getting harder and harder for me to actually turn it on. But I've always had a weird accent to begin with. Like I said, I was born Yankee. My dad moved us down there, and we became damn Yankees. But I did pick up, this weird kind of Southern slang, kind of Michigan slang.
Amalgamation.
Yeah, because like we'd come and visit our mom every Christmas and every summer, so we would keep some of that Yankee, but then we're surrounded by them Southern folk most of the year, so we definitely picked up a lot of that.
Fucking rednecks.
Like, if you heard my dad talk, you'd be like, yeah, he's from North Carolina, because he's been down there so long. Like, there's no Yankee left.
It's set in.
There's no Yankee left in him. Like, he's everybody else now.
Do you miss the South at all?
No. For one, it's too damn hot.
It is hot. It's hot as fuck.
And for two, I've been told by quite a few people, if I were to ever return, that there could be like a public lynching. So,
The fuck did you do?
well, I'm a damn socialist. That's bad. And on top of that, I'm a damn atheist, which is worse. So.
You've been away a long time. I don't think that
No,
the
they all hate
socialist
me.
thing is probably a bigger deal than the atheism.
They all hate me. They all despise me down there. Most of them anyway. I still got a few cool people down there that kind of agree with me on shit. But no, I've literally been told that if I were to ever come down there, there'd be some physical trouble for me.
Well, I'll share a bowl with you if you come down to South Carolina.
No, I do plan on I want to take my daughter down there so she can see where I grew up and see where my dad lives and all of that stuff. So we're
Don't stop in North Carolina though. That's a shithole. Come on down to Charleston.
I never liked South Carolina much outside of Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach was.
Oh,
alright.
you liked Myrtle Beach? Ah, fucking shithole.
Dude,
Charleston. I like Charleston.
I used
I
to-
like Hilton Head, but Hilton Head's so expensive.
I spent most of my summers at Myrtle Beach. I'd get home from Michigan and shit. We'd be down there quite a bit.
Would you be interested in coming down and firing some guns with me?
No, I don't.
Oh, because of the felony thing and
Well, I not only that, I just don't. I'm never comfortable around guns. I had this really good friend. He's the guy that I first started doing YouTube with on my old channel. Worked with him. He looked like Jesus. He was very fundamental. And he was a Second Amendment advocate, and he carried his guns with him everywhere. And he brought them into my apartment the first time. I'm like, you better you take those guns outside and put them in the fucking trunk of your car because they ain't coming in here.
good grief, man.
Yeah. I just get
All right, I
uncomfortable
mean, but
around them.
to each their own. In your house, you are the king, and your rules apply. I support that.
It's why I get uncomfortable around cops is because cops have guns.
Fuck, that's not why I get uncomfortable around cops. I don't care that they have guns. I do too. It's just that I know if they're talking to me, they're looking for a way to make money off of something that they can write me a ticket for. They're not there. They're not there to be friendly to me, and they really don't give a fuck how my day is. So if they're talking to me, they're trying to generate a fine. So I don't have anything to say to them. And it's not that I don't appreciate what they do. I just don't like when it's done to me. So I know what to do. I shut the fuck up.
So, do you think that we should have any police force?
Yes.
But you can't trust.
Yeah, I
them.
know. I used to be an anarchist. Because it's the most moral form of existence, but it is not practical because humans are shit. Bipeds cannot be trusted.
True. I mean,
That includes the
if
cops.
if you used to be anarchist, then you used to be someone on the left, huh?
No. No, that's no. The left is not anarchism. The left tends to lean towards more government control.
Well, anarchism, I do believe, is a left ideology, though. Let me look it up.
You can look it up if you like, but you can't. There's no government under anarchy, so there's no way to generate a revenue to supply a community. That's why you can't be an anarcho communist. I don't think that can work out, because you still have,
Yeah. As an anti-capitalist and libertarian socialist philosophy, anarchism is placed on the far left of the political spectrum.
that's a very strange place to put it.
See, well, that's what I was saying. I think that maybe you have a very modern interpretation of the political spectrum and what makes politics. Maybe
Okay,
not.
well, I mean, I'll grant you that my understanding might be flawed, but here's the
Not
thing.
so rooted in like the political philosophy or the understanding of where ideologies fall.
I recognize the need for some government, but it should be minimal, and it should not ever infringe on natural rights, because that violates its intended purpose.
So, but that's our fundamental argument when it comes to what we were talking about with abortion, though, is our
You
fundamental
still have to prove there's a
rights.
right there.
Well, you have to prove that there's not.
No. That's easy to do if that's a human life. A right cannot infringe on another person's right. That's what the government's there to avoid. So if there is a living human being, a human life there, and it has, by that virtue alone, natural rights, then killing it would be a violation of its natural right.
Do you think that bodily autonomy is a natural right?
For your own body, yes.
Yeah. Does the fetus have a body?
Yes.
At conception, a fetus has a body.
It's contained in something.
Is that something a body?
It is becoming a body. It is its form.
So the fetus, the bodily autonomy of the fetus outweighs the autonomy of the mother.
No, it's equal to,
How is it equal?
because they're both human life.
Icarus, he's never going to answer that question. So I'm not. He doesn't like the word person.
I mean, I like it when it's used appropriately. Yes.
Yeah, well, but Icarus is right. You're equating, and this has been the argument. You're equating human life with person.
I'm not using the term person at all, because human life is where rights come from, not from a person. Because a person, if you look it up, it doesn't just mean living being. It can be an artificial, like a corporation. Black's Law Dictionary makes it really clear.
Yeah, but I mean, which I did look that up, and it's personhood, but not the personhood we're talking about. Like your answer
Right.
to
So I'm
that-
just avoiding the term person.
Your answer to that was very like sovereign citizen. I'll look it up again, but it was.
It's not to know the law is not sovereign citizen. Okay. And by the way, that term bothers me so much because it is an oxymoron. You cannot have a sovereign who is also subject. A citizen is a subject.
So that's why you don't call yourself a sovereign citizen, is because you don't like the terminology?
It doesn't make sense. Whoever came up with that's ridiculous.
Are corporations persons? Was the question I asked my computer. So
Come on, computer machine.
Interestingly, while the court has concluded that corporations are quote-unquote persons within the meaning of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, the court has been quite reticent to concede that corporations are citizens for the purpose of the Privileges and Immunities Clause. So it's person, but it's like a different classification of personhood than what we're talking about when we're talking
Right,
about
it's limited capacity.
human beings.
Yes, a person implies a limited
So when
capacity,
we're
whereas a natural
when we're
human
having a
does.
conversation about the personhood of a human being in relation to a woman's natural right to have privacy in her own medical decisions, that's the argument. Now, you maintain that personhood begins at conception, and you say because it's
Yes, no,
human
no, human
DNA.
life. No, don't confuse my words.
Well,
I've
no, you say
specifically told
human
you
life.
I will not agree to that.
You say human life,
Yes.
but the argument is personhood. That's what I'm
Well, you can
saying.
make that argument, but that's not.
So
I'm not.
you say
I'm
human
not going
life,
to play
but you're
that game.
arguing. You're arguing that personhood begins there at that first day. That's what you're arguing.
I know what my words are is that human life begins at conception. You may do what you want with what I said and try to input your own words into that, but my words need to be very clearly recognized because I chose them specifically.
I know. I think I've called that out. Just like you tried to call me
Well,
out
you
for
can
using personhood, but it's the same thing. But
look.
it's not even
If
really
I
the
told
same
you,
thing because
if
the
I told
argument
you,
is about personhood. That's the right
if
word
I told
to
you
use.
that a cat's tail was to be considered a leg, and I asked you how many legs a cat has, what would you say?
That's like the dumbest question I've ever heard.
Really? Lincoln didn't think so, but anyway, the point is, the cat will have 4 legs. It doesn't matter what you call his tail; it's still a tail.
What does that have to do with an embryo?
Because you can use whatever term you want, it's still human life, and we're not falling for the bullshit word language anymore. At least on the conservative side, we're tired of terms that are meant to obfuscate the actual issue, which is human
do you
life.
think like terminology like embryo and fetus that these are terms to obfuscate? I can never say that fucking word.
Obfuscate. But yes,
I can't
yes,
say that word.
If you will try to separate the fact that the embryo is still, regardless of whether you call it an embryo or what stage it's in, it's still human life.
Even though these words have been around to describe.
Yeah, I saw it. You could use the words, but it doesn't take away from the idea that it's a human life. It's just a stage of that human life.
All right, so Brian Stevens has a question for you. He asked, do you need a license to travel in a car, or do you have a right to travel without being licensed?
Okay, that's a weird question.
You know, he tagged me.
All right, under the first,
I'm trying to be better about seeing my chat.
I'm gonna reason through this out loud. Okay, so
go for it. I'm gonna.
Under the First Amendment, you do have. Okay, under the First Amendment, you do have the freedom to assemble. To assemble implies travel. Okay, so yes, if you're traveling, you do have a right to go there. You do have use of the roads. As far as a license, no, I don't believe that you have to ask permission to exercise any of the rights. I understand why it's there. I understand, what the Driving Act entails, but it's converting a right into a privilege and then charging a fee to get a license to exercise the right, and that's unconstitutional. There's several different court cases that support that idea, but again, I don't think it's.
You cut out on this, William.
Necessary to challenge it. It's not you get the fucking license and do it that way. If you want to go to court and you want to argue these things, and I know people do, that's fine. I have the kind of time to go in there and argue that, and I'm capable of doing that, I guess, if I needed to. But I have a license. I just signed it under duress. I mean, if you looked at my driver's license where my signature is, it clearly says under duress, and then lists that it's a signature of convenience.
Do you believe? I know you believe.
Which means I don't agree to your laws.
I know you don't believe in paying like taxes, but do you pay taxes?
It depends on the tax. The taxes that I have a problem with are income tax because it's a form of slavery.
So do you pay an?
You're taking the produce of my labor, which you've done nothing to deserve, and you're confiscating it without my permission or consent. You're just taking it and considering it necessary to give me the ability to work, which is nonsense. I think that you can say owning 100% of the produce of someone's labor is slavery, but at what percentage does it cease to be slavery? 99%, 50%, 12%. I mean, what are there degrees of slavery? So if you want to talk about if you want to talk about like a flat tax or consumer tax, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with paying the highway tax when I fill up my gas. But when it comes to labor, my work, and someone else just stealing directly, I think you used the term when you were talking to Leo that it's like we're, I don't know if you said it exactly, but it's like we're feeding them. They're like parasitically. You use another word, but they're extorting us or exploiting. You said exploiting. They're exploiting the work, right? They're just milking us.
I agree with the sentiment there, but I also agree that we live in a modern world. Governments often do really good things, like having a collective to pull together resources and take care of your own community is, I think, vital.
That involves theft, though.
Well, you call it theft.
It involves theft.
You call it theft, but
it is.
You're also granted,
granted.
Well, you're part of a country, right? That has laws, that has systems.
I live in a geographical location. Yes,
I could agree with you that like maybe our prison system is like slavery. To use a word like slavery, in reference to taxation, I don't think you can compare that with slavery. Now, maybe theft.
Let me ask you a question.
But not slavery.
If I had a really great idea that you thought would serve the community, would I have to point a gun at you to get you to donate?
Say that again.
If I had a really good idea that
nobody points a gun
let me say this again. Let me say it again. Oh, I guarantee you, if you don't pay, there is a gun, and it'll be on the side of somebody who will take you and put you in a cage if you don't agree.
Well, yeah, but even then, they're probably not pointing it at me.
I mean, that depends, but there's the threat of a gun behind every piece of paper that comes from a government. There are no suggestions in government. But here's the thing. My point is, if you have a good idea, you don't have to compel or coerce people. They will volunteer. I will gladly donate money willingly without coercion to a good idea. But I don't appreciate, and I will not tolerate, just having things stolen from me and used for shit like sending $40 billion to Ukraine. What the fuck was that? That's my money. You don't get a tax to fund war like that we have no business in. That's bullshit. Right? But I have no say. And if it was and it is a bad idea, I would have said no. So it's taxation without representation. You're not representing me, just taking my money and doing what the fuck you want with it, and it's killing people. And so I'm not with that.
Well, I'm not muted. I kind of agree with the notion, right? Like I don't believe in a war. I don't think my taxes should pay for wars.
All those bullets that you paid for are busting people up.
I don't have much say in that, right? I don't have any say really what my taxes go
Don't you
towards.
though? Don't you though?
Well, I mean, I do buy my vote. That's the say that I have. Or
if that were true, how many people support?
Or I could enter public service and try to politically change the laws myself.
I think Flow State asked, it might have been Flow State or Serb, one of them asked, I think it was Leo, have you ever volunteered to pay more in taxes than what they demand of you? You know what? Nobody does that. Nobody volunteers to pay more taxes than they owe. Why? Because they didn't want to pay the first part to begin with. It's being taken. You don't get a say and you don't get to control where it goes. But we are supposed to be the people. The government is supposed to be by us, for us, or whatever. Taxation, representation, all that shit out the window. But who puts the brakes on when the government is out of control? Is it the people? Because it's not going to be another foreign government.
Well, I believe that's how the system is designed, and I think that's why.
So why do you hate militias?
It takes a long time. Well,
why do you hate militias then? Because we are that balance.
No, you're not. I don't see that balance. I think political movements are that balance. I think
if we weren't that balanced, you wouldn't call us domestic terrorists.
Well, I call you domestic terrorists because you've been labeled domestic terrorists, and that's
By who? But by who?
That's because your methods
By who?
by the authorities that label these things.
Right, the ones that we are the balance to. That's exactly right. They're demonizing their check. We're their check, and they hate it.
So, because you're so weird, because you say that I misrepresent you. So all right, I'm gonna kind of educate you here. All the questions that we've been asking started with Brian Stevens. The questions that I've been asking you about taxes, all of this stuff, you answer as a sovereign citizen, right? You claim you're not a sovereign citizen. You say you hate the terminology, but you have the very same beliefs as them. 1, 2. When I say you're in a militia, I'm fucking wrong. But here, when you say you're in a militia,
wait. When did I say you were wrong? When did I say you were wrong
all
about me being in a militia?
You say that I have misrepresented you on that since the beginning.
Yes, and you do. You call us terrorists. You think that we're a right-wing group that does harm to people, and you've asked me a ton of questions, and I've been consistent on every single point. I don't do violence to people unless it's self-defense, and I don't justify things just because I want to. I don't want to harm anyone. That's part of my code. But if it forced me to, I will. Maybe
not you particularly, but you do admit that these militias do terrorist activities. And what I mean by terrorist is their tactics are to instill fear of citizenry.
How's that different from the police?
I didn't say it was.
Okay. I don't see what the issue is.
I have, for one, the police are organizations that, while they need to be retrained, they are essentially forces that are needed to maintain law and order. If you live in a society of law, you're going to have some kind of enforcement of said law, right?
Yes.
So
now what happens when
the difference between militias and this is where I think that your idea of what a militia under the Constitution means falls very, very short, especially if you look at the things that Hamilton wrote. That
you mean Hamilton that started his own militia and died in a gunfight? That's interesting.
I'm talking about the Hamilton that wrote about
militias. He wrote in the Federalist Papers. But
his party's perspective.
Do you know about his life?
A little bit.
And so you know that he began with his own militia that he started.
Probably.
Yes, he did. And he died. He lived by the sword and died by the sword.
They were pretty common by the. And you were part of the conversation where Pat pretty much educated what a militia was back then compared to what a militia is now. So when you.
No, I wasn't part of that. Me and Pat, I don't think have ever talked, have we?
I'm fairly certain you was part of that conversation. Because we were talking. I mean, we were talking about militias. There's no reason to talk about that if you're not there, because that's where this conversation comes from.
So my question was, do the people have any responsibility to keep the government in check?
Yes, through the way we vote, through political action.
No. You can't vote the government if the government is corrupt, and you've insinuated that even the Supreme Court is corrupt to its ears. So, what good does voting do if your government is corrupt? Like that seems ignorant.
I mean, voting got that corrupt government. Honestly, I mean, these movements. Republicans vote for Supreme Court justices. Democrats don't. I mean, they've done it for a long time. This is known. I don't get your point. So if you want to
you don't get my point about tyrannical government.
So while I think that the Supreme Court is corrupt, I don't advocate for killing them all. I advocate that we, through political movement, either expand the court or over a period of time replace those justices. I mean, that's how modern
with
worlds
more people
work, right? Yeah. So if you're talking about a tyrannical government, all right. So let's say Donald Trump's coup actually happened.
Yeah.
And let's say
Donald Trump's coup. Yes.
Let's say he stole the presidency, and we had tyranny. In that instance, I believe it would be our responsibility, sure, But
You ready?
But that's very different.
But are you ready?
No, you become ready in the moment. But
that seems foolish.
Well, I mean, maybe I don't. For me, particularly, going out in the woods and pretending to be G.I. Joe doesn't seem like much fun.
Is that what you think we do?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, do you disagree with the fact that modern American militias oftentimes utilize terrorist techniques, which get them put on terrorist lists?
You say that's a fact, and you're making a general statement.
I'll say that there are. Agree with that.
I'll say that I'm answering. I'll say that there are specific individuals who have done some fucked up things. Yes.
I mean, like I think there's like 76 of these militias that have been deemed terrorist groups.
No. You don't get to say deemed terrorist groups and then apply that to some violence that they've done. Okay, because that's not where the term comes from. It's the fear that they may do something and that they're organized enough to be a threat that puts them on the terrorist watch list, that they've made statements that make the government uncomfortable. That's not that they've actually done anything harmful to anyone. Now, some have little groups, maybe 3-4 people do some stupid shit. And then you broad paint everybody, but cops do the same thing. Cops fuck up. But you don't accuse all police departments because somebody in Los Angeles beat the fuck out of some Asian guy for no reason. Some cop did this shit. So you don't get to just throw this broad, domestic terrorists over all militias. You don't know enough about us to even begin to say that.
I haven't done that. I asked specifically about the however many groups it was that have been deemed to be terrorist organizations.
Right, and if you can show me where each one of those have done some violence, I'm willing to agree with you.
Well, that would take quite a bit of research, wouldn't it?
I mean, that's your burden, though, if you're going to make the claim that it's a fact, and I don't think it's a fact.
Well, I mean, I think most of these groups, I'll dig up the information, but I think most of these groups have engaged in
that
violence.
Would be good.
In fact,
such as
violence against. So a lot of these groups show up to protest, and oftentimes.
Like Antifa.
Oftentimes will have instigate the violence with the anti-protesters to whatever they're protesting.
You mean they'll engage with Antifa's antics? Yes.
Well, not all left protesters are Antifa.
No, and that's really we don't fuck with any protesters who aren't doing stupid shit, throwing stuff at people. You can watch video after video of militiamen just standing by, taking fucking abuse. But whenever a punch or rock gets thrown, somebody gets their ass spanked, and it's not normally the militiamen.
Taking a bunch of abuse. Yeah, right. Come on, dude. For real?
If you throw a brick at someone or a fucking cup of piss, that's abuse. And yeah, I'll beat the shit out of you for throwing piss on me.
Well, but usually, and the new Antifa, I haven't dealt with Antifa.
They're a bunch of pussies, man.
I don't know how they are now, but I mean. So when I'm looking at videos, like say, if I'm looking at Charlottesville, which was a lot of white supremacists, but there were also quite a few militias there. If you look at any of those videos in that, it's your side throwing the bricks. It's popping off a gun just into a crowd for no fucking reason. I have been in a lot of these protests. Like I said, I used to go to protest all the time. I used to actually run with a lot of Antifa back in the day. I've been to.
Wait, how's that possible? How's that possible? Antifa is just an idea. It's not a real group.
Well, Antifa is an idea, but there's several there's several Antifa groups. Like American Antifa started. I've told you.
They're a bunch of entitled, rich white people.
They started in the punk rock grunge scene in Seattle and Portland in Washington, and
they beefed up after Occupy Wall Street with Black Bloc.
Maybe, but I'm talking how it originated.
Don't try it. Don't try and soften it up. Where they come from.
It was a direct response to the skinhead
and they're not
movement.
Anti-fascist. There's nothing about them that is anti-fascist. They try to silence dissent, which is fascism.
Mm,
You try to silence any opinion that is not their own.
Fascists will utilize that, but a lot of people do.
Okay. Well, anyway, they're not really a threat. They just think they are.
Your side does that, doesn't it?
What's that?
I mean, it seems to me that your side is all for free speech unless it's our free speech.
Show me where we're trying to silence anybody talking.
I mean, all the time. I get
no. Show me a specific example where we are trying to keep people from voicing their opinion. We like when leftists talk because it proves that they're ignorant.
I'm sorry, I'm just reading.
I'm all for letting the other side talk so I can destroy their ridiculous ideas.
Except for Bond.
I'm not worried about your chat. I've never paid attention to it unless I'm in it.
Bond always likes shitty people. So Bond is my soulmate, and we may have to fight because I'm going to marry that man. We are going to have really ridiculous imaginary children. So I mean, this has been fun. We got about a half an hour left or so.
I've enjoyed it too, man. You're not you. I expected you, and believe me, I had my arsenal ready, but I was very surprised that you've been so pleasant, and I've enjoyed it a lot. I know that you don't want to be my friend yet, but I think in time you'll understand that I'm not a threat to you.
Well, I don't think you're a bad dude. I enjoy talking to you. I appreciate the fact that you are honest about where you stand. You don't run away from these things. You know, like I think a lot of people probably wouldn't admit so freely to being in a militia. You know, no, I think there's a lot of good aspects to you. There's also things that make me worry. When it comes to like on a religious level, I'm not worried about you at all. In fact, I think probably I would prefer most Christians believe that along the lines that you do. Where we really tend to differ would be on this political level.
Yes.
And for me, it seems that these militia groups, and you've actually opened my eyes to that the problem is actually a lot worse than it is.
Oh shit.
I mean, you're the one that told me that there were thousands of little pockets of these groups, like.
Yeah, but the idea that they've been there and you haven't noticed that they existed pretty much illustrates that they're not a problem. They're not fucking with anybody.
They are a problem if, say, this radical conservative movement, which is based in culture war, were to really, really go to violence like we did see on January 6th. So if there's an actual call to arms from, say, somebody like a Donald Trump figure, a lot of these groups
from 2024.
A lot of these groups, I believe, would you deny that a lot of these groups would jump at that opportunity?
To what?
To reset America back in the image that they want it to be?
Well, conservatives are normally about trying to keep the Constitution as it is without adding anything extra constitutional. That has changed in the Republican Party, which I don't like the Republican Party. I think that they're just as dirty as the Democrats, and I really don't have any love for them.
You're a Trump guy, though, right?
Yeah.
So, if Trump's the one...
Do you think Trump is a Republican?
Well, he plays at one on TV.
He's more a classical liberal than I've seen in a long time.
All right, so Trump in reality has always been a liberal. He was a Democrat his entire life.
Yeah.
He just thought
you don't just turn over the next day and give up those values.
He understood Democrats would never vote for him. We were never going to vote for him to be president. We had talked about it for fucking for 2 decades. If Donald Trump wanted to run for president forever, and Democrats, we were never going to vote for him. Republicans would.
I don't see how that's a loss for the Democrat side, since a liberal managed to get in there.
It's not a loss for our side.
And did some really good things. He did some really good things. He'll be back.
There's no way that you can argue that Donald Trump policies while he was in the White House were liberal.
Well, okay, well, about what he did.
Huh?
What was illiberal about what he did? What did he do to remove freedom?
Well, on that what I'm talking about is politics, right?
I'm not talking about progressives. They're not liberal. Progressives aren't liberal.
So what did he do to
Okay,
remove
I'm talking
freedom?
about. Yes, what did he do to remove freedom?
I think that there are a lot of children who were removed from their
I
parents.
just need.
A lot
Where?
of them on the southern border.
You mean under the Obama policy that was in place when he got there?
I'm talking about the amped up Jeff Sessions, Donald Trump policy, not the Obama policy.
What about the policy that's there now?
Yeah, I've actually been critical of Joe Biden for not getting rid of it, but Joe Biden has tried. He was struck down.
And are these people
court.
citizens of our country?
Well, I thought rights are inherent. What does being a citizen have to do with it?
Whether they can implement like shit to you, whether you can be processed. Because once you come in, if they have laws, okay, and they do have laws, whether they're just or not, I don't know. That's up to someone making a moral decision. But the point is, under those laws, when you enter in illegally, you are in the process of committing some crime, misdemeanor, whatever. And anytime that you're arrested, you are separated from your family. That happens. You don't get to take your kids to the lockup with you. It just doesn't work that way. So if you're going to make that argument about building the border, you have to do it across the board to all criminals. You have to say, hey, that's wrong to separate, this fraudster or this thief from his kids, while he's in prison. That's wrong.
All right, whatever. So what about all right, man. So,
no, wait a minute. What's wrong with that? Whatever is not even you either agree, you disagree.
It goes against everything you've told me so far today.
How?
You are the one that has implied governments cannot take away your rights.
Right.
So by creating a policy that wasn't necessary to separate children from their parents was taking away the rights of those children.
Is trespassing on someone else's property a violation of their rights?
Yes.
Okay.
But we're not talking about.
So a right is being violated when a person trespasses on our soil.
We're not talking about somebody trespassing on somebody's personal property. We're talking.
We're
talking about. We're talking about immigration. Oftentimes,
we're talking about illegal immigration.
You asked for a specific example, which is only one of them, of Trump taking away freedom.
Say illegal immigration if you're going to be honest.
It wasn't just illegal immigration, though. It was also legal immigration. They attacked all forms of immigration, and you know that. You just
right.
You don't want to admit that your side takes away people's freedom too.
No. How is telling someone to stay the fuck out unless you're legal? How is that taking away their freedom when they go, nah, I'm coming in anyway? How's that taking away their freedom? They're coming across uninvited.
So that would have been one of them, and we're not going to get into the semantics of that because that arguing that with you folks always pisses me off, and I'm not trying to get pissed off.
Now I'm back in that group, the you folks.
Right-leaning folks that would defend Donald Trump's Southern policy really piss me off.
It's not just his Southern policy. It's this policy or the idea that our borders need to be tighter goes back even into the Clinton era and before. This is not a new phenomenon. It's just getting worse. We're incentivizing it more and more, and we're not. I just swallowed a gnat. That's so gross. Anyway, oh God, that's gross. So I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
I've done that. It sucks. It sucks. I would also argue, and a lot of people put like Muslim ban. I mean, there's a lot of things that I would consider taking away possible freedom, right? Like, so when you're attacking legal immigration like he did, I don't know if you know anything about chain immigration, but he definitely attacked that, which has always been one of the...
Is that like the Dreamer thing?
No. It'll be...
Where like if you're born here, even if your parents are...
No, the Dreamer thing. The Dreamer thing is a constitutional argument. So the Constitution recognizes a citizen as somebody that was born here.
Right.
So like chain immigration is like you I don't want to butcher this, but it's basically like you have a family member here, and it creates an easier path of legalized immigration into the country. Right. I'd really have to go and pull it
All
up
right.
to go through.
Let me give you my.
But the point of this was that Donald Trump was attacking immigration on all levels, and there is, I think you would agree that this country, even though I think a lot of it's an illusion of freedom, and you probably wouldn't disagree with that, this country does offer considerable more freedoms than a lot of these countries these people are trying to immigrate from.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, but this is my problem.
That's a direct argument that Trump was directly taking freedoms away.
No.
Now, I know you don't. You also don't think that abortion is a fundamental freedom.
No, I'm not moving past immigration yet, because the part we're not talking about is the slave class that we're creating in this mess. Okay, we're creating a slave class, and you want to talk about a second-class citizen? An illegal immigrant is that by definition. Okay, they cannot get the same wages as a legal citizen. They cannot have the same benefits and privileges that a citizen has. So if they're coming in illegally and we're not doing anything about it, and we're not getting them processed, and we're not naturalizing them, then what we're having is a growing slave class that we are abusing. And if you can support that, that's fine. I think it needs to be stopped and addressed, because do we really want to step back into the sins of our forefathers?
Well, I wouldn't disagree, especially when I find out, like, some states are paying these folk like $2-3 an hour. It's insane. But
could we close the borders and then handle? Hold on. What if we close the borders just temporarily and got everybody, gave them amnesty and got them the social security numbers and
don't have to close the borders for that.
Yeah, well, to process everyone, or at least to control, because the flow is far too great for what we have resources to handle. And in fact, when we started shipping them to Washington, D.C. and New York, you get a whole lot of realization that the infrastructure will not hold. So what we're trying to do is we need to at least process what we've got so that we don't continue to add to the slave problem.
So I would be for amnesty. I think it's stupid we haven't done it at this point. I think
because it's still flowing through. You have to stop the leak before you can process what's already here. You're allowing not you, but we are allowing an entire community to grow based on separation. This us thing, instead of allowing them to become us.
Well, I mean,
and they need to. If they're here,
we're talking about immigration just in general now, which wasn't the point.
No, we're talking about illegal immigration.
I was talking about Trump-specific policies that not only attacked illegal immigration but legal immigration, right?
Okay, because illegal immigration is creating second-class citizens. That has to be stopped.
Illegal immigration. Yeah, I agree. We need to do something about it, but the solution isn't closing the borders or closing America off.
I'll agree with you.
People are coming to this country because they are generally fleeing oppression.
Right, but I'll agree with you under this. If you're open, then you have to remove the income tax and make it a flat tax, so that even those that are not
the flat tax tax would be horrible.
They're going to have to pay their part because the infrastructure will not support otherwise. We do not have the resources or the infrastructure and organization to deal with this.
If you give them amnesty and legal status, then they will be paying taxes.
That's right. But you have to make them feel safe enough to come forward. And that means that, again, the amnesty, forgiving their original crime of coming over, and at least controlling the flow until we have a system that can process this appropriately. Because I will never be for continuing what we're doing to the people that are coming across. And they're not just Mexicans. I almost said that, but Guatemalans, Africans, everybody that's coming up that's looking for the promise of America. Instead, they're finding a second-class citizenship where they're spit on. And they don't have the access that we all have. And I know that there's this whole idea of white privilege and all that, which is nonsense. But there is a lack of any sort of privilege for those that are coming in and that are not legal. They don't have access to the
What?
equal opportunities that we all have.
Why do you think
It's not equal to them
Why do you think white privilege is nonsense?
because we all have the same opportunities
Do we?
under the law. Yeah.
So
And do you know who's doing better than white people? Asians, Indians. The Constitution wasn't written by Indians or Asians, so explain how they're doing better if there's white privilege. Why wouldn't white people be at the top?
how are Asians at the top in America? How
Economically,
how are white
family
people
structure.
not at the top in America?
Because we don't do as well as Asians or and when I say Indian, I'm not talking about Native Americans. I'm talking about people from India
I know what you're talking about
as well.
Are you saying that all Asians are top of the chain here in America?
Did I use the term all?
I don't understand what you're saying with that. All right.
I mean, there's nothing
white-
holding these people of other colors back from doing what they want to do. We make our own choices and deal with it. I know you don't like that
you don't,
concept
you don't
because
think
you think it's
you don't think
bootstrap.
environment can hold you back? So
Sure,
so
yeah.
are you honestly going to sit here and tell me that a kid in the ghetto
Show me the law that's racist. I'll wait.
a kid in the ghetto, whether they're white or black, but especially like let's say a black kid in the ghetto, right? Do they have the same opportunity in America?
So you're talking about wealth privilege as opposed to poverty. I didn't argue there wasn't privilege of having wealth.
I'm talking opportunity.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what color you are. Well, I take that back. You actually do have a benefit if you are a minority because you will get privileges that white people don't get.
So you believe in what, minority privilege and not white privilege? So do you know,
In some cases, but again, it's not white privilege. It's wealth.
Do you even know what that terminology is referring to? Right.
Talking about white privilege?
Yes.
Yeah, it means to be in the majority.
No.
To apparently have better,
No.
I guess, social situation.
No, for one, it's referring to an infrastructure, right? Like, so an infrastructure of power that has been consistent through the history of the nation. But for two, it's simply the simple statement of this. You know, if you're white in America, you know, you might not like the police, you might not trust the police, but you're not going to really truly worry about the police going to pull out a gun and shoot you.
That's nonsense. More white people are shot every year than black people by police.
It's something that white folk don't have to worry about.
Address what I said. Statistically, white people are shot at a far higher rate, especially white males over black males, and it's probably due to population density. But
yeah,
there's less repercussion. Hold on. There's less no. There's less repercussion for shooting a white man than a black man. Because nobody's going to march about that white guy getting shot. No one gives a fuck if the white guy got shot. That's not newsworthy.
Well, I would disagree.
No, what? How could you disagree?
I would say I would disagree because I personally don't want anybody to be shot.
Who is George Floyd? Do you know that name?
Of course I do.
And do you know Kelly Thomas?
I'm fairly certain I've heard it, yeah.
Do you know the difference?
No.
You don't know much about Kelly Thomas because he was white.
I don't know much
about. Look into it.
Kelly Thomas.
It's the worst case of police. It's the worst case of police abuse I have ever seen in my goddamn life, and it barely made the news because he's white and there's no story there.
So I'm not disagreeing with you that media covers certain stories and not other stories, right? Like that's not the problem. That's not what's so you're trying to.
No, the narrative is the problem.
It's simply this notion, right? That in this country, historically, with being white comes certain privilege.
Right. That's why there's no poor white people.
You're just not getting it, right?
No, because it doesn't make sense. There's no color privilege. You have much more privilege just having a nuclear family rather than a single parent household.
Oh, man.
You and I both know the difficulties of being a single parent.
Yes, I agree.
Your child will do better if we had, mine as well. My children would do better if their
I,
mother wasn't a fuckwit.
I agree. So I agree. I think that in the modern world, right? Like, just as a product of being so far removed from actual civil rights movements, that racism is diminished. Like, I don't think that 90% of the country are white supremacists now like they were in, say, 1870.
Oh, I think racism's still alive and well. I just think that the left refuses to admit that it comes from all races.
That's what
all races are racist.
Kind of getting to that but even if there were no racism left whatsoever, doesn't take away from the institutional damage done by a history that is there and relevant and still relevant to this very day.
Explain that damage. Explain how the Civil War and all didn't hurt white people as well as black people.
What?
Yeah, up to the Civil War, slavery kept black people down, right? And Native Americans. And then white people fought to free black people, costing thousands and thousands of lives, families snuffed out. Yet, and this was the only place this was happening. Okay, so, but instead of getting the credit for ending this horrible institution, white people are demonized for ending it. It's ridiculous. Now, arguably, every one of the descendants of those slaves are better off today than had their ancestors been left in Africa. Convince me I'm wrong.
Oh, that is such an awful thing, an awful way to look at it. All right, so...
No. Look, how is it awful to say that our ancestors had their own struggles, but we ended up catching the break that is America?
Let's put it this way, right? All right. So, have you ever had to walk down the street or go to a public park, and see a representation of a man or a person that thought you were less than human, thought that you were indeed, as you said earlier, livestock? Have you ever
livestock? No, the white devil. Even though I'm pretty dark myself, I call that a lot. I mean a lot.
White devil.
But it's just names.
So
it's just names.
You talk to a lot of ISUPK?
I don't even know what you just said.
Well, ISUPK, they're Black Hebrew Israelites. You talk to a lot of Black Hebrew Israelites?
Oh, numbskulls. No, I don't. No. This is just. I used to work for a rental company for a little while. And I used to have to go in.
All right, a more popular group that would use that terminology would be like the American Muslim movement, right?
Sure. And not only that, I was a bail agent for a while, and believe me, the neighborhoods I went into, I stood out like a sore thumb and was definitely not welcome there.
So do you think that they would that there might be reason in that community to have animosity towards some white folk?
Oh yeah, it's the way they were raised.
Well, no, I mean actual reasons outside of being raised that way. That there's actually
most of them aren't. Most of them in that community didn't. It's almost entirely black, and then there's other communities here that they self-segregate.
Well, I'm talking about the black community. Do you think that within the black community there is legitimate reason to not only distrust the white man but to dislike him?
Legitimate reason, just on the fact that he's white? No.
Well, on the fact
no, what do I have to do with the people that enslaved their ancestors?
So Jim Crow, so slavery wasn't that long ago, right? And in fact, when what we consider to be the end of the Civil War didn't immediately free slaves. Like every slave wasn't free for quite a while afterwards. For two, Jim Crow went on until what, the 50s, 60s.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But to this very day, to my example that I was trying to give to you, that you never really answered me on.
No, go with it.
That there are people that have to walk into public areas and see monsters that had subjugated their entire people.
Well, why are they monsters?
Because they subjugated an entire people.
These people that you're talking about have themselves done this to someone else.
Huh?
The people that you're talking about statue. You're talking about monuments.
I'm talking about I'm still talking about white privilege, right? Like I'm trying to give you an
Right. Are
example.
you saying that
Have you
these?
ever
Okay, I'm
had
trying to
to
understand.
experience that?
Are you asking me if I've been offended by a monument? I don't know what you're asking me.
I'm asking you if you've ever walked into a public area that was immortalizing a figure that saw you personally as less than human.
Yeah. There was a statue of Albert Pike that I was like, oh, that's a piece of shit. There. I don't know why they have that up there. He was one of the founders of the Klan, and I didn't, and a Freemason. No offense, Cerberus, but he was a piece of shit. And he did look at basically your average person as being just cattle.
And you didn't appreciate that, did you? You just
No, who would appreciate that?
You kind of intimated that you didn't.
Yeah,
like
but I
that.
didn't try to tear the statue down because it's a reminder of its history. It's what you have to strive to not let happen again.
I don't think that he personally saw you as less than human.
Oh yes, oh yes. I'm not a Freemason. Yes, I would just be another useful idiot in his mind.
Pike thought Pike was a white supremacist.
No, he wasn't. Just because he founded the Klan, that was for political reasons. He wasn't necessarily a white supremacist. It's not like it. You can still be profane and be white. It's not about that. It's about enlightenment. I don't want to get into that's more Serb's area. I'm not going to get into the Freemasons too much, but I didn't like his character. I didn't like what he was about, even though he's had some pretty accurate predictions about the three world wars. That's been pretty interesting. I'm waiting on the third one now, but he hasn't been wrong about what he said. Kind of leads me to the idea that we're being manipulated. But yeah, no. But at the same time, I'm not going to rage against shit that's lifeless and pointless.
All right, so
I'm not going to hold a grudge.
So ultimately, my point was, well, I do think that particular demographics in this country have particular reason to dislike and distrust Caucasian people for what has been done throughout the history of their past.
So you think that there's a reason to be racist?
Not just black folk. Let me finish my statement. Not just black folks, but also Native American folks, other minority and ethnic groups, gay people, trans people.
And they should only distrust whites?
Well, I mean, primarily. So
that seems really racist, Knock.
Well, let me finish my damn statement because you keep interrupting me and throwing me off track. So primarily the power structures for the longest period of time, now the dynamics have shifted recently in modern times, has always been white male. So yes, even when it comes to for the longest history, gay folk, trans folk, most of the aggression they were experiencing was indeed coming from white folks.
Even though they themselves were mostly white.
Huh? Yes. So you're not getting me. But my ultimate point, because you keep
it's not race, not
stop. Fucking
it's not race.
Stop interrupting me so I can actually.
Well, I have to because the hour I've got to leave. You need to wrap it up because I've got to leave. It's 9.
We're wrapping up soon. But my ultimate statement is, despite all of this reason that they would have, most folks just aren't racist. Most black folks, most Native Americans. And most white people nowadays just are not racist.
Good, we agree.
But that doesn't take away from the institutional racism because of over 200 years of laws and institutions that were.
Show me the law that exists today that's racist. If not, then end it because it's done. We're not going to go back and correct for history. There's no way to do it. Move on, get over it, or don't. I don't give a fuck. I mean, it's not going to change anything. So, like, I don't have to say sorry.
The whole modern war on drugs has been disproportionate.
Hold on, I gotta take a. If you're going to keep virtue signaling, I got to take another toke.
Well, I'm about to end it because I do want to end it right around 9:00. But
all right, yeah, all right. I'll wait.
My ultimate point is that these institutions exist. If you want to talk about modern times. I forgot my point because you fucking keep interrupting me.
I mean, I don't think you had one because there's no laws that are racist in nature or intent. If you can show me the law that's racist in nature and intent, I'll support getting rid of it.
So
Okay.
my point, and it took me a second. You just keep talking. So like in modern times, right? The war on drugs has been disproportionately aimed at minorities in the country.
Yeah, in the hood. Yeah. What's your point?
We have fed our prisons now. Probably in the last decade or so, the numbers have evened out. But our prisons have been disproportionately minority peoples, even though
They commit
white
crime at a
people
higher
has
rate.
always had a vast majority of the country.
Yeah, but blacks commit crime at a higher rate.
No,
statistically.
the war on drugs was aimed in their
Oh
direction.
no, when you're talking about the war on drugs, that was never constitutional to begin with. There is no constitutional authority to stop people from using or selling drugs.
You said name the modern laws that were racist or whatever.
That's not racist.
I gave you a clear example of.
That's not a clear example.
An institutional problem.
No.
Racism.
It's not a clear example. It's not abusing anyone because of their race. It just happens to be that blacks commit crime at a higher rate. They're 13% of the population, yet commit 53% of all violent crime. So, and that's like per capita.
So you're
so
you're definitely a racist.
How is that racist? I'm the opposite of racist. I say that it doesn't matter. I don't think the laws are racist. I can look at the statistics and go, hey, that seems to have a racial lean. But I worked in prison. Okay, I'm very aware of the makeup, the demographic of prisons. Nobody's getting arrested for being black. That's stupid.
I mean, if you honestly think that,
I honestly know that.
Stupid one.
No, I await your proof, and now the burden is on you to prove that someone has been arrested for being black. That virtue signaling is you're above that. Please stop pandering.
Oh my God.
You're not going to get any clout from anybody by being a good ally. It's nonsense. You sound like a moron when you suggest these things.
Now you're just resorting to Smokey Saint tactics, which is
I got to go.
It's always fine. No, we're gonna shut this down.
Well, you called me a racist, Knock. You called me a racist with no evidence.
I mean, I think that
everything that was said that was racially intent, that had racial intent, was you. I don't do identity politics. That's what the left spends their time fucking around with. I don't do that shit.
So again, all right, so earlier when I directly
2
mentioned
minutes.
Cultural Republicans, you're a Trumper, so you're definitely one of them.
What's that got to do with being racist?
You don't think that cultural Republicans utilize identity politics?
I don't think that Republicans are racist. We've been against slavery since the beginning. You're going to need some evidence for your claims. I'm not one of these other yo-yos that you can just throw nonsense at.
I mean, you need to have evidence from your claim that you're still the Republican Party of Lincoln, because that's really easy to show that you're not.
Do you want to talk about the party switch? I love that. We can do that. We can. Let's put another one on the books, and we'll just focus
check out my
on
debate
that.
on it with CJ Cox.
No, you'll have to debate it with me. I don't worry about what you do with him. You can debate it with me next time.
Well, I mean, you can see my stance on it.
I'll still look at it, but it's not going to make you right.
Well, I mean, it's history.
All right. I really enjoyed it, Knock, honestly, and I do like you. I might get under your skin, but I do like you, and I am sorry that I overtalked a little bit, but I am pinched for time.
I mean, you're not the worst one I've ever talked to. So I mean,
maybe we get married later. You know, who knows what's in the cards. All right, I'll check you later, man. I might be in your side chat later, so you can block me.
Well, no, I was gonna have an after party, but I am exhausted, so I'm gonna go to bed early tonight. But I'll have a room tomorrow night if you're around.
All right, very cool, man. I enjoyed it, and you take care of yourself, buddy.
All right, have a good one. I thought he was leaving. All right. Wow. Wow. I need to turn a light on because everything's grainy. I have to go through that. I think some of my arguments could have been better in certain situations, but in these conversations, everything's off the cuff. No way to prepare for these kinds of conversations to have the right facts up all the time. That being said, I think we learned a lot about William tonight. and I'll let you guys determine what you learned. I think I'm gonna go back and definitely watch this one back, maybe even a couple times, and try to get insight. I guess Midnight, you're having an after show. I didn't know you even had a channel, Midnight. Is your channel called Athena, Goddess of Wisdom and Warfare? Interesting conversation. I intentionally started it out on something that I knew would be more agreeable, which would be his religious beliefs. We covered a lot of areas. Started with abortion, kind of went into rights. We covered a lot of stuff. I think there really is no doubt, and he'll get mad at me for saying this, but I think there can be no doubt that while he doesn't like the name sovereign citizen, he's a fucking sovereign citizen. And Midnight says yes, so there will be an after show on Midnight's channel. Like I said, I'm exhausted. Usually I would try to hop into that for a little bit, Midnight. If now that I have a channel, now that I know you do rooms, let me know, and I'll definitely try to jump into a room. But I'm really tired. I'm gonna go to bed early. And that conversation gave me a fucking headache. I ain't gonna lie. Now, ultimately, like I was saying, William's not the worst person I've ever talked to. He's got a lot of bad ideas, I think, a lot of bad beliefs, but he thinks that I have a lot of bad ideas and a lot of bad beliefs, so that's subjective. He got mad at me calling him a racist there, but I mean, I think that a total lack of acknowledgement of any institutions that would hold a certain demographic in this country down, perpetuated by remarks about how black folk are just inherently more violent. That's why I made the statement that I made. But I don't really know him on a personal level. I know that a lot of people in these militias tend to be fucking racist. They just don't like to admit it. And I think that there's a lot more racist people still walking around, but it's an underbelly. It's not something that's talked about openly like it was 20 years ago. They reveal themselves when they're comfortable, when they're around their fellow racists. And I know this because sometimes they assume that I'm one just because of the color of my skin. So I hear it. And I think that to deny that reality, especially if you live in fucking South Carolina, well, you know the reality exists. You're denying it for a reason. But I don't know. Again, he's not the worst. He did take a really smoky saint tactic there at the end. That's like the only real time where William really left a bad taste in my mouth. To imply that I'm virtue signaling because I believe in equal rights is pathetic. And to deny that your side, I mean, it's the cultural Republicans that are actually playing the identity politics right now. And if they deny that, I think they're just insane. But I don't know. I'm going to have to mull this one over. I knew it was going to be aggravating. That's why I put in the thumbnail, ugh, because it was going to be an ugh conversation. I want to thank you guys for watching it, for listening. I know when I do watch it back, I'm not going to watch it back tonight because I'm going to be going to bed. So tomorrow the chat will be up. I'll look at your chats and see. I'm trying to see things more as I go through. I'm trying to make myself pay more attention to the chat. But when you're in a conversation, it's impossible to see it. So I want to see what you guys were saying, what you guys think. If you think that, some of my argumentations were off, let me know which ones. I'm going to go through it myself because, like I said, off the cuff, it's just really hard in the moments to have everything you need. And sometimes you're just wrong. So if I'm just wrong, let me know. But outside of that, I think I did okay. My main goal is to keep my calm now. Not, only rage if it's vitally necessary for me to rage out. And it's a lot easier now that I'm not on, all those medications. I'm not drinking. If I could just quit smoking. That's the real struggle right now for me. But a lot easier to keep the rein on my emotions if I'm not all fucked up. So, yeah, I'm going to have to watch this one back. Thank you guys for watching, for being here, for listening to the nonsense. I'll see you guys soon.